Moya the man. Moya the man, Nichol Brummer.
Moya the man. Moya lived in times that we cannot imagine. He lived through changes that none of us can even understand. We, these days, you hear all the time, you hear people saying, times are changing, things are new, there's this internet, there's another revolution, everybody has mobile phones now, everything is changing all the time, we're living through revolutions. We're even busy changing the climate, and we don't know how to change that we are changing the climate. It's all going wrong. What can we do? Now Moya, he lived in the time that slavery was abolished. The abolition of slavery. Now, that is something impossible, isn't it? Now let me go back to when I was a little kid, 6 years old. And I lived in Holland, and then once in a while we went to South Africa to visit my grandparents. My grandfather was a farmer. He had a gigantic farm with a mountain and everything. Lots of people working for him. And to me it was always a bit strange in South Africa because you had to get used to this. All these black people, they treat you with reverence and servitude, and they take off their cap and they call you little boss. That's completely strange to me. And my grandfather told us stories about the past that was even more strange. Because when he was 6 years old, he knew Moya. And then, at that time, Moya was a really old man. He was more than 100 years old. He was the servant of the family of my grandfather. And the strange thing about Moya was that he had been a slave long, long ago. My great-great-great-grandfather bought him when he went to Mauritius. Nobody knows why my great-great-great-grandfather went to Mauritius, but it's probably because it was when the Brits from the Cape, they attacked Mauritius. It was the Napoleonic War, and they invaded, they took over the Mauritius from the French. And my great-great-great-grandfather was there, and apparently there was a Frenchman that had to get rid of all his possessions, including his slaves. And my great-great-great-grandfather bought 2 of these slaves, they got a good deal, and went home to Cape Town. And that's what we know about Moya. The other thing, one thing we know is that he wasn't from Mauritius. He came originally from Mozambique. So just imagine when he was probably 6 years old, he was in a little town in Mozambique, little village, and then there was an attack from some other tribe nearby. They captured a bunch of people, other people ran away, and these people were all tied together and they had to all frog marched all to the ocean. And there, the first time he saw the ocean, there was also the first time he saw a ship, the first time he saw a white man, and they put him into the ship and they carted him off. And he was sold in Mauritius. Luckily, he didn't become a worker on the plantation, which was very hard. He just became a domestic slave. And he came back to South Africa, and there he was also a domestic slave. And then in 1834, so he was, when he came to South Africa it was 1814, it was just still the Napoleonic War. 1834, in all of British Empire, slavery was abolished, finally. This was you couldn't believe how that was, what a big effect that must have had. All over the world, basically all the English world, slavery was abolished. But this man, he chose to become the employer of his previous owner. So he worked for Thomas, and then he worked for the son of that employer, and the grandson. And then the great-grandson, who was my grandfather, knew him. He was 6 years old in 1906. And the one story that my grandfather always told us, very short story. It is that each Christmas, everybody in the farm, they got new clothes. So everybody at the farm, for Christmas, they could throw away their old working clothes and they got new uniform, new clothes, and they would look nice. They got some presents as well, and some whatever. But Moya, he got, of course, because he was really the old man and he had some kind of honored place in his family, he got special treatment. So that the maids and the gardener, they got a big tub somewhere and they rolled it in outside in the sun, and then they boiled a lot of water. They filled the tub with water, and then they helped Moya to take his clothes off, and the fire that they boiled the water in, they just threw his clothes in the fire, and then he had to get into the bath, and then he just lie there, and they would scrub him on his back, and they would wash his nails, and they would cut his nails and cut his hair and cut his nails on his feet, and they would scratch him everywhere where he needed to be scratched. And he was got completely clean with soap and everything, and then he came out of the bath. And my grandfather was just a little boy. He was always there to look at this. So then he came out and he was dried and he got his new clean clothes. And my grandfather would ask him, "How do you feel now, Moya?" And Moya said, "Oh, I feel so good. I'm so nice and clean, scratchy, clean new clothes." That was the whole story. That was all my grandfather remembers. But I feel I have to give this story to the future so that Moya is not forgotten. And I think if slavery could be ended, maybe we have some hope that we can change climate change as well.
2 minutes this time.